moral concern. Now, I want to talk about Islam for a moment because I think we are wise to be concerned about it. As you know, I'm concerned about religion in general, but I think we're wise to differentiate specific religious beliefs. And we are, I think, quite encumbered by political correctness and just frank confusion on this front. One problem is that we have this one-word religion, which names this truly diverse spectrum of fascinations and ideological commitments. And religion is a nearly useless term. It's a term like sports. Now, there are sports like badminton, and there are sports like Thai boxing. Okay, and they have almost nothing in common apart from breathing. Now, there are sports that are just synonymous with the risk of physical injury or even death. I mean, there's sports that are just synonymous with violence. Now, if you get injured playing badminton, you're just embarrassed. We're facing a problem at this moment. There is, I'm happy to say, a religion of peace in this world, but it's not Islam. Okay. To call Islam a religion of peace, as we hear ceaselessly reiterated, is completely delusional. Now, Jainism actually is a religion of peace. Jainism is the core principle of Jainism is nonviolence. Gandhi got his nonviolence from the Jains. The crazier you get as a Jain, the less we have to worry about you. It is. This is. Jain extremists are actually they are paralyzed by their pacifism. Jain extremists they can't take their eyes off the ground when they walk lest they step on an ant. They filter every sip of water through cheesecloth lest they swallow and thereby kill a bug. I mean, needless to say, they're vegetarian. So the problem, notice, the problem is not religious extremism, okay, because extremism is not a problem if your core beliefs are truly nonviolent. The problem isn't fundamentalism, which we often hear this said. These are euphemisms. I mean, the only problem with Islamic fundamentalism are the fundamentals of Islam. Now, we have Mullah Omar and Osama bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. These guys agree about the nature of reality and how to live within it. And the problem is they are giving a very plausible version of the faith. Osama bin Laden is not the Reverend Jim Jones of the Muslim world. It would be wonderful if he were, but the problem is he is giving a truly straightforward version of Islam, and you really have to be an acrobat to figure out how he's distorting the faith. Now, if these guys were Jains, or Buddhists, or Amish, or Quakers, it would be patently obvious how they were distorting their religion. I mean, in fact, their behavior would be unintelligible. Okay? It is not obvious by the light of Islam, and this is just a fact we have to speak honestly about. And no one should be speaking more honestly about this and more volubly about this than moderate Muslims. Moderate Muslims have to find some way to grapple with this fact. But to say that Osama bin Laden is David Koresh is just a lie, and it's a dangerous lie at this point. Now, I just want to rehearse for you what these core beliefs are and what they entail. The belief is that Muhammad got the Quran directly from the Archangel Gabriel in his cave in the 7th century. And it is the perfect word, therefore, of the creator of the universe. I apologize for the cartoonish nature of this image of Muhammad, but quality images are difficult to come by at the moment. Now, the consequence is we have this single book, which is imagined to be the best book on any subject ever written, never to be superseded by any human effort at any point in the future. Now, this is a problem because this is a profoundly mediocre book. Okay? It is dangerous to say this. It is suicidal to say this as a Muslim. It is true. And we have to grapple with this fact. And the idea that this is the best book ever written on any subject can only be maintained in a kind of fantastical intellectual isolation. And this isolation has actually been achieved in the Arab world to an astonishing degree. Some of you probably have heard this fact, but the country of Spain translates more of the world's literature and learning into Spanish every year than the entire Arab world has translated into Arabic since the 9th century. Okay, that's scary. It's scary given that the contents of this book really offers precious little rationale for living in a sane and pluralistic global civilization. What it does give you a rationale for is ceaselessly worshiping the perfect being who has given you this mediocre book. And this is a photo of Muslims in Kashmir worshiping at a shrine believed to contain a single beard hair from the Prophet Muhammad. Now, in showing you this image, I don't actually mean to denigrate the positive emotions that can be associated with this kind of practice. I mean, I think devotion is a positive emotion that we want in our lives. And I certainly don't mean to make light of how difficult life undoubtedly is for Muslims in Kashmir. But it seems to me patently obvious, given the challenges that they face and that we all face in creating a world worth living in, these people have something more important to do than worship the beard hair of a man who may well have been a schizophrenic. And again, when I talk about Islam, one thing I should make perfectly clear and should have made it clear at the top, I'm talking about the logical and behavioral consequences of ideas. I'm not talking about people. I'm not talking about all Muslims. Not all Muslims are terrorists, obviously. Not all Muslims support terrorism. Not all Muslims take Islam all that seriously. I'm certainly not talking about a race of people. I'm not talking about Arabs. I'm not talking about nationalities or ethnicities. I'm talking about ideas and what people can plausibly do on their basis. And what people do on the basis of these ideas, it turns out to be very bad for women to a remarkable degree and in general. And there really is no basis in Islam to argue that there should be true equality between the sexes. I mean, you can finesse this issue, but what you cannot get is just a clear statement of men and women are equal and have the same moral stature. It's just not true. You have to edit the faith to get that. And one thing you also get by the logic of the faith at this moment is this death cult behavior that we're now all too familiar with. Suicide bombing of the most extraordinary and ceaseless kind. I mean, you can reliably turn to page 8 of the New York Times every day and discover that someone has blown up a mosque somewhere. First thing to point out is that no one suffers by this more than Muslims. I mean, they're Muslims getting killed by this. It's not Americans for the most part. This is a bombing in Pakistan where Sunni bombed a Shia procession. Now the Sunnis view the Shia as apostates, and bombing them makes sense. The core issue here is this notion of martyrdom. The notion that death in defense of the faith is the surest way to paradise. Okay, this belief is what makes sense of this behavior. Now, I want to linger over this image for a minute, actually. This is a little girl. You can't quite see her in this lighting, but this little girl crouched over the corpse of her mother. And this is actually not the initial bombing. What they did is they bombed a procession of Shia pilgrims, and then they sent another suicide bomber to the hospital to wait for the ambulances to come in to blow up the casualties and the doctors and the nurses and the ambulance drivers. So this is a shot from outside the hospital. And just imagine this. I mean, just imagine what it was like for someone to come up with that idea. It's kind of creative in a truly diabolical way. Someone had to volunteer to be the suicide bomber. Someone had to get up in the morning thinking this is the best use of his life, to blow up this little girl's mother. And I mean, this is, again, realize this is not collateral damage. This is the point of the exercise. In fact, by this logic, by the logic of this belief, it is impossible to kill the wrong people, because all the good Muslims you blow up are going to go to paradise, and they're going to thank you. All the bad Muslims, all the apostates and the infidels are going to go to hell where they belong. It is impossible to screw this up. Okay. Now, just so you don't get the sense that I'm narrowly focused on Islam, I would point out that the moment you see the link between morality and human well-being, you can see that notions of right and wrong and good and evil that come to us